Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. And this was, of course, Fight for the Fallen tonight on Dynamite. And, of course, from the Daily's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. And Fight for the Fallen on tonight's Dynamite. This was a good show. This was an awesome show. Really enjoyed the show from beginning to end tonight. We had a lot of good matches that was set. We saw Cody, the TNT champion. He ended up taking on Sonny Kiss, and the TNT Championship was on the line. We saw FTR versus the Lucha Brothers. We also saw the Elite versus the Jurassic Express. We had the Dynamite debut of the Nightmare Sisters, which were Brandi and Allie. Of course, Allie's not being called the Bunny no more because she's not with the Butcher and the Blade anymore. So we have this new, women's team with Brandi and Allie. They're calling themselves the Nightmare Sisters. And I'm like, what is with AEW and the word nightmare? Of course, we had the Nightmare Collective, Nightmare this, Nightmare that. I'm like, what is with them with the Nightmare? And then we had in the main event Jon Moxley versus Brian Cage with the AEW World Championship on the line. Brian Cage still, holding the FTW Championship that was given to Cage from Taz. But overall, Fight for the Fallen, good show. Really enjoyed the show from beginning to end tonight. Because you had Jericho and the Inner Circle in the segment, which I thought was the highlight of this show, in my opinion. And Jericho going crazy in that segment. It really made that segment hilarious, which I will get to explaining though. But let's jump right into the Dynamite review of Fight for the Fallen. So Dynamite, Fight for the Fallen ended up kicking off tonight with the TNT Championship on the line. Cody defending the title against Sonny Kiss. And this was a very good match. This was a back and forth match between Cody and Sonny Kiss. Sonny Kiss, I've said it before, very talented in the ring. Seen him perform at indie shows. He was popular with the people at those shows here in the New York area. I know he competed in also Jersey area, from what I heard. So when he was wrestling in the Indies. So, but Cody, of course, came out with Arn Anderson, and right when the match started, we had Cody going right after Sonny Kiss. And Sonny Kiss, when he made his way out, he came out with cheerleaders. He ended up putting on a dance before he made his way to the ring. Then when he made his way, Cody ended up going right after him. And Cody in this match was showing off some of his heel tactics throughout the match. There was a point where he ended up taking the turnbuckle pad off. He was going to launch Sonny Kiss into it. But Sonny Kiss ended up launching Cody into it. And, of course, there was a point where Cody ended up taking off his weight belt. And he looked like he was going to hit Sonny Kiss with it. Of course, he couldn't do that because the match would end in a disqualification. But Cody ended up getting the win. Ended up hitting the crossroads to Sonny Kiss. There you go. Cody ended up winning the match. Retains the TNT Championship. Overall, it was a very good match between Cody and Sonny Kiss. It was very entertaining. And, Cody, like I said, showing off his heel tactics in this match was awesome to see. It's been a long while since we've seen Cody use his heel tactics. Of course, when he was in WWE, we ended up seeing that. It's been a long time since we seen that. But overall, very good match. And post-match, we had Cody and Sonny Kiss end up hugging, and Cody ended up raising Sonny Kiss's hand. So that was pretty cool. And then we went to FTR, Dax Harwood, Cash Wheeler versus the Lucha Brothers of Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix. Of course, they ended up coming out in the van along with the Butcher and the Blade, which they look like they left their job at the bakery. So we had them made their way to the ring, Lucha Brothers, and the match itself, it was a very good match between these guys. It was highly entertaining, a lot of back and forth between them, and there was a point in the match where you had Phoenix do a step-up crossbody on Wheeler. Wheeler's chest was bleeding, and at the end of the match, you had Dax Harwood. He ended up yanking Phoenix's mask off, and he ended up rolling him up. And there you go. FTR ended up winning the match. And post-match, you had the Butcher and the Blade. They ended up taunting FTR about them still having the keys to their van. And we had Mad Nick Jackson sneak up. And they end up super kicking both the Butcher and the Blade. So Mad Nick then have the keys. Mad Nick then ended up heading to the ring. They end up giving FTR their keys back. And Kenny Omega ends up walking out. He gets into the ring from the back. And he ended up having beers. And Kenny Omega ended up giving the beers to FTR, to Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler. Omega ended up saying that he'll have a beer. He ends up cheering the beers with FTR. And then FTR then ends up dumping both their beers on Kenny Omega's head. So Kenny Omega was covered in beer. His head was covered in beer. And that really pissed off Omega. And this was payback from FTR after Kenny Omega ended up dumping the beer, on the ring, on the mat. So this was payback from FTR to Kenny Omega. So Omega ended up going at FTR. Matt and Nick end up trying to hold Omega back. So then FTR end up walking to their vehicle, their van. They end up getting in. And Cash Wheeler end up trying to get the van started. And it looked like they were having trouble getting the van out of there. So that was basically that. Oh, and forgot to mention, for commentary, we had Taz on commentary during the first hour. Apparently, Tony Schiavone, Taz was replacing Tony Schiavone because Tony Schiavone was unable to make the show tonight because he was waiting on his test results, his COVID test results. They end up explaining on commentary that Schiavone hasn't tested positive and that he hadn't received the results in time. So AEW, they're handling this pandemic, pretty good. They're doing a much better job than what WWE is doing, because AEW is keeping, strict testing protocol and strict testing procedure, and they end up saying that everyone must pass the COVID test before they are permitted to enter the Daily's place. So Tony Schiavone couldn't make the show tonight because of them not having the test results, there. So Taz ended up taking over for the first hour. Jericho ended up taking over for the second hour, of course, because Taz had to leave commentary to manage Brian Cage. So speaking of Jericho, we had Jericho and the Inner Circle, Santana, Ortiz, and Hager. They end up making their way out. Of course, Sammy Guevara is still suspended. So they end up coming out. They had 2 cartons filled with orange juice. So they made their way into the ring. Jericho ended up getting on the mic, and he ended up saying that last week he not only won his match with Orange Cassidy, which, in my opinion, that was one of Jericho's best matches in AEW so far. And he said not only did he win the match, but he also won the ratings war. And Jericho ended up saying that he's going to explain the ratings and how they work. So apparently this was taking shots at the people on Twitter who basically go on there and say, "Oh, AEW won the ratings war this week. Oh, no, NXT won this week." That's what basically Jericho was talking about here in this segment. These people go on there, and it's like they're like, "Oh, AEW had the better show. That's why the ratings were good this week. Oh, NXT had the better show that week. Their ratings are up." It's basically that. So Jericho was taking shots at those people who go back and forth on those ratings. He was also taking shots at NXT and how their ratings are. So he ended up saying that while it's great to win overall viewers, the ratings are all about the 18 to 49 demographic. And those ratings do matter. The ratings still matter, especially if you're watching a TV show that gets a 1.2, 1.5 in the 18 to 49 demographics. That's pretty decent. If it was lower, like a 0.5, 0.4, around there, that's like cancellation territory. Your show would be canceled if it got those ratings. If it was on broadcast TV. But Jericho ended up saying he never lost in that 18 to 49 demographic. And he calls himself the Demo God. And he ended up saying that he knows what the people want. He ended up saying that, the people want a rematch between him and Orange Cassidy. He's like, the network wants it, the advertisers want it, the demo all want to see the rematch. And Jericho was saying, "Oh, you want to see the rematch? You want it? You want it? Well, you aren't getting one." And then you hear the people in the crowd saying, "You're afraid, you're scared, you're scared, you're scared." So they were chanting that at Jericho. Jericho then ended up saying that Orange Cassidy took him to the edge, that he couldn't get the job done. And he ended up saying that the Demo God is never scared. So Jericho then ended up congratulating Orange Cassidy for staying in the ring for one night, and that he could go back to his best friends, of course, Chucky T and Trent. So Jericho then takes a sip of the orange juice for Orange Cassidy. And then he ends up pouring one out for Cassidy's career. So he just dumps the orange juice on the canvas, on the ring canvas, the mat. So he had beer, and now I guess the beer that was falling from Kenny Omega. So you had a puddle. In that segment with Kenny Omega with the beer, and now you have orange juice also being poured on the other ring canvas. That ring canvas took a beating in this first hour. So, but Jericho, Orange Cassidy's music ended up hitting. He ended up making his way down through the stands of the Daily's place. Jericho ended up saying that Orange Cassidy is too lazy to be in the level of him. He ended up calling Cassidy a slot and that he's entitled. He then ends up telling Orange Cassidy that there will never be a rematch. So he had more "you scared" chants from the crowd. So Jericho then ends up telling Orange Cassidy to shove his glasses up his ass and get out of the Daily's place. So Orange Cassidy is just standing there. He gives Jericho a weak thumbs up, like that. And then he gives Jericho a thumbs down, like that. So then we see orange juice being poured down from the rafters. So orange juice ends up spilling down from the rafters, covers Jericho and Hager, Santana, Ortiz. Jericho took the worst of the spill of the orange juice from the rafters. And so Jericho is going crazy now, shouting, which made this segment hilarious. And Jericho was saying, "Cassidy, this is a $7,000 jacket." And then Jericho ends up asking someone to throw him a towel. So one of the crew guys ends up throwing in a towel for Jericho. And he opens up the towel. And on the front of the towel, Jericho didn't even realize it. It showed a giant photo of Orange Cassidy's face on the towel. It was hilarious. And then Jericho was like, "Cassidy!" It was hilarious. And then Dynamite went to commercial. I guess if you watched it on, I think, Fight TV, Jericho was even going more crazy while it was on commercial on TNT, which it was funny still how Jericho was going crazy. But really enjoyed this segment. This was hilarious. All that orange juice being spilled down from the rafters, covering Jericho the worst, was absolutely hilarious. You had I think it was Santana. He slipped on the orange juice and landed on his back in the ring. And Jericho ended up going crazy, shouting. That's just hilarious. That was just funny. And then to make it worse, Jericho had to go on commentary here. This was the start of the second hour of Dynamite for Fight for the Fallen. And so he was going crazy on commentary. He was yelling at Jim Ross. And then he was saying, "What are you laughing at, Excalibur?" And then, like, 2 times during the second hour, they end up replaying the spill of the orange juice from the rafters onto Jericho. And then Jim Ross goes, "How could you do that to a legend?" So, but it was hilarious, though. And that was one of the highlights of the show tonight. But then we went to the Elite, Matt and Nick and Kenny Omega versus the Jurassic Express, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt. this was a good match between these guys. You had one point in the match where Nick Jackson ended up doing a drop kick to Marco Stunt, and we had Stunt end up getting kicked by Nick Jackson, which looked like Nick Jackson really ended up kicking him in the head. And at the end of the match, you had the Elite win it. Kenny Omega ended up hitting the V-Trigger One-Winged Angel to Marco Stunt. Went for the cover. There you go. The Elite ended up winning the match. Post-match, you had Kenny Omega. We saw him smiling. He was smiling weirdly. Then he starts swinging away on Marco Stunt. The Young Bucks, Matt and Nick, end up stopping Kenny Omega immediately. And the Jurassic Express end up looking annoyed at Kenny Omega. They end up telling Omega to back off. Omega end up slumping back into the corner. And he was just talking to himself. And that was basically what happened. And we saw, I forgot to mention, we saw Hangman Adam Paige a little bit here for maybe 2 seconds, just watching the match, having a beer. Could this mean that we might possibly see Kenny Omega turning heel at this point of what we saw tonight? But maybe. So I would like to see a heel Kenny Omega. See how that would be portrayed. Overall, good match between the Elite and the Jurassic Express. Then you had Alex Marvez. He was interviewing Hikaru Shida, the AEW Women's World Champion, backstage. She was asked if Nyla Rose should get another rematch because of some of the contenders being out of action. I guess because of COVID. So Hikaru Shida ends up telling Marvez that anyone can challenge her, and that Nyla Rose is brave and strong enough, and that she wants to see it. So there you go. Hikaru Shida is ready for any challenge, whoever steps up. So then we saw after that Jon Moxley cut a promo, which was done earlier in the day. Moxley ended up saying that the last few weeks have not been the best for him, and he's been bothered by many things. Of course, Moxley, he couldn't compete against Brian Cage last week at Fyter Fest because of what happened. Moxley had to quarantine himself because, of course, his wife, Renee Young, tested positive for COVID. So Moxley had to quarantine himself. The match was supposed to happen last week at Fyter Fest, but it was now scheduled to take place at Fight for the Fallen. So we ended up getting that match, which was the main event. So Moxley ended up saying that he'll be able to purge his anger through as he defends the AEW World Championship against Brian Cage. He ended up saying that according to Taz, he can't land his finisher to Brian Cage because Cage is too big. He ended up saying that maybe he'll just rip Brian Cage's torn biceps in two. So that was the promo that Moxley ended up cutting. But pretty good promo from Moxley. And then we had the women's match. This was a quick match. We had the Nightmare Sisters, Brandi Rhodes and Allie. Of course, they came out along with Dustin Rhodes versus MJ Jenkins and Kenzie Paige. And this match was meh, in my opinion. And MJ Jenkins, she was a former NXT superstar. And she was let go, and she now appeared tonight on Dynamite But Allie ended up getting the win for her and Brandi. Allie ended up hitting a reverse DDT elbow drop on MJ Jenkins. So there you go. Allie and Brandi end up winning the match. So that was that. And then Dasha was in the ring with Nyla Rose. She was interviewing Nyla Rose. Rose is asked by Dasha who her manager is going to be. Rose ended up saying that she's not going to tell who her manager is. And that she will let them say it for themselves. And then out came Vickie Guerrero with the whole, "Excuse me!" So Vickie Guerrero ended up making her way out. She ended up saying that when she and Nyla Rose go after the AEW Women's World Championship, it will be at the perfect time. So Vickie ended up saying that the women's locker room should stop lying to themselves that they are any good at all. And she ended up saying that Nyla Rose will take everything that they ever dreamed of. So there you go. Nyla Rose's manager is revealed to be Vickie Guerrero. My God. My God. You know, the whole excuse me thing, when she comes out, does a pretty good job for the mute button on everyone's remote. So, yeah, once you hear that, "Excuse me," pick up your remote, mute the TV. There you go. That is my advice. So then the commentators end up announcing matches for next week's Dynamite. We're going to have Cody defend the TNT Championship once again in another open challenge. We're going to see Hangman Adam Paige versus 5 of the Dark Order. Okay, we all know Hangman Adam Paige is going to win that. We're going to be seeing Ivelisse versus Diamante. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. Wait a minute, is it? I just want to check 1 second. Is this Ivelisse from... Oh, wow, this is Ivelisse from Lucha Underground. So she is going to be appearing on Dynamite next week. Oh, I'm really looking forward to that. You know, I haven't seen Ivelisse since that last season of Lucha Underground. You know, it's going to be good to see her compete in the ring again. So that's going to be pretty cool to see. But they also announced for next week's Dynamite, MJF and Wardlow are going to be in action. So we're all looking forward to seeing MJF and Wardlow. We're going to be seeing, of course, the Young Bucks versus the Butcher and the Blade. And this is going to be a Falls Count Anywhere match. So that's going to be good. I think that's going to be a win, of course, for Matt and Nick. Of course. And then we're going to be seeing Jericho and Hager versus Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy of the Jurassic Express. So there you go. Those are all set for Dynamite next week. And then we went to the main event. The AEW World Championship on the line. Moxley versus Brian Cage. Before the match got underway, Taz ended up getting on the mic. He ended up saying that Moxley came on the show and he was chirping in the promo that Moxley ended up cutting earlier, which was filmed earlier in the day. So Taz ended up saying that Brian Cage is healthy and has been training his ass off, while Moxley was in quarantine with his wife, of course, Renee Young. So Taz ended up mentioning about that, bringing real life into this, with Moxley, being in quarantine because of Renee Young being tested positive for COVID. So pretty much, basically, we had Moxley end up making his way down from the rafters of the Daily's place, from the stands of the Daily's place. And right when the match started, Cage ended up going for a punch. He ended up missing the punch, and Moxley ended up throwing punches in the corner. And we had back and forth between Moxley and Cage. Of course, Taz was still on the floor. He was at ringside. And we had Cage end up trying to do a suplex, and Moxley ended up holding on. There was a point where Moxley ended up putting Cage's arm in the barricade, and he ends up kicking it. Moxley ended up getting another barricade, and he leaned up against the ring apron. And we had Cage reversing the paradigm shift because Moxley was going to go for the paradigm shift. Cage ended up reversing it into a suplex, which sent Moxley into the barricade, which was pretty brutal. And there was a point where a chair was set up on the floor. Brian Cage suplexed Moxley through it, and the chair, bended a little bit. And then we had a point where Moxley ended up picking Cage's fingers because Moxley ended up going for the cross arm breaker. And there was a point where Moxley ended up giving the middle finger at Taz, which was funny. And because of that, Moxley ended up still had the arm breaker locked in on Brian Cage. Taz had enough at what he saw. Taz ended up finally throwing in the towel, and the referee ended up seeing the towel, so the referee called for the match. Moxley ends up winning, still retaining the AEW World Championship. Post-match, Brian Cage ended up smacking Moxley with the FTW Championship, and then he was swinging away at Moxley. The lights ended up going out in the Daily's place, and as the lights came back on, Darby Allin was shown. Darby Allin ended up returning. He was on the top turnbuckle with a skateboard. He leapt off the top, and he nailed Cage with his skateboard. Cage ended up rolling out of the ring, and pretty much that was basically that. And Cage was on the outside. Cage looked like he wanted some more. Taz was holding him back, and officials had to come out to separate Brian Cage. And pretty much that was basically how Dynamite Fight for the Fallen ended tonight. But overall, it was a good match between Brian Cage and Jon Moxley. And at this point, right here with Brian Cage, it takes Brian Cage out of the title picture, and now he's going to focus more on Darby Allin since Darby ended up returning. But I knew that Moxley was going to retain the title. I mean, Brian Cage just stepped through the door at AEW. It wouldn't make any sense now that he stepped through the door and made his debut at Double or Nothing. You have this little build, and all of a sudden, if they would have did this, they would put the title on the AEW World Championship on Brian Cage. I'm glad that they didn't go that route, because that's something that possibly WWE would do. But overall, Fight for the Fallen, very good show, very enjoyable show from beginning to end, and really liked it. So, anyways, that's it for the Dynamite review, or Fight for the Fallen review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review, and definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all on Friday for the SmackDown review. So until then, see you all later.